order the Sustainability Commission for January 9th. Welcome back, everybody, to the new year. We'll take roll call. Tim is not here. Sorry, it's starting with Steve. Here. Nick. Here. All right. Brian. Here. All right. David here. Pam has excused.
Yes, she
Absent.
is out sick.
All right.
Oh, I thought she was gonna be joining.
She called me like maybe
Right
15
after
minutes
she
ago.
sent
She's
the
in
email.
urgent care right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
Somebody else signed online. Aaron, you comment sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fine.
All right.
That may be 10. Perfect timing.
We were dragging through a roll call. We're like,
We were wondering how you were faring with having to go in the office every day.
Yeah, it's exciting time.
Yeah.
Traffic does not have a pattern yet, so.
We'll do the land acknowledgement.
Yep.
We acknowledge that we are on indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples. We have reserved treaty rights to this land. Who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. All right. Any comments on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the agenda approved by common consent. And for approval of the meeting minutes, any comments or concerns about the meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, we will call the meeting minutes approved by common consent. All right, public comment, none in the room. And
We've got one hand raised online, so I'm going to promote Mary Wichter to panelist.
And I will start a timer when she begins speaking.
Mary, are you there? Oh,
Yes, I'm here. It just takes a minute to actually get online.
Mary, we can't hear you.
She's unmuted.
Yeah.
Are we on the right?
Can you hear me now?
Sometimes.
Can you hear me now?
At least over Teams.
One moment, Mary. We're working on it.
Okay.
Speaker.
I have all my speakers and tests on.
4100. Phones. Speakerphone unmuted.
We just need to turn up the volume, maybe.
Let me check that.
Sometimes that's my problem at home
Yeah.
with my headphones. If I have them turned off for a
The
while.
volume is up to 100% on the computer.
Mary, can you try again?
Yes, can you hear me at all there?
Not yet.
Okay, you can hear us. You
Yeah,
can hear us, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, she can hear us, but we cannot hear her.
Worst comes to worst, I can have her.
Usually that would be red.
Check this out. So this is frozen up.
Thanks for your patience, Mary.
no problem.
Okay, we still have her. She's
Yeah.
still on
I
Zoom.
see in the
Sorry
call.
about that.
No,
I
you're
forgot
totally
that
fine.
was gonna fly on the scene something like that. But this is frozen up, so we're gonna see if resetting that helps us out some.
Oh, this is an artist that I really like. She released a new album this year called Sugar Water. And this is part of her merch.
Okay.
It's not actually sugar water, it's just normal water. But I thought it was cute.
So-
I needed a new water bottle. So.
Right.
Here, this
Yeah,
should
she's
be-
actually coming in March. I'm very
Who's that?
excited. Her name's Maud Latour.
Right.
She's a little bit of a smaller artist, but she's open for a couple folks, and I just really
Nice.
like the mood of her music.
nice.
Recommend it.
She might be like the more theater, the crocodile or something.
This time it's at Numos.
Okay.
But previously she was at the Vera Project, and Chop Suey was another recent. This will be my 4th time seeing her in Seattle. It's still, the tickets are still affordable, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Some take like Sabrina Carpenter was in town recently. It was like $200, and I won't splash out more than about 100 on artists.
Mary, it's not, do you want to call my cell phone and I could put you on speakerphone? I'm sorry, we're not able to hear you. So my number, Mary, you got a pen?
She could also do mine too.
206-735-2289. And then I'll put you on speaker. Look at that.
Thanks, Rachel.
Hello.
Okay, let me get off my double audio here with Zoom. Just need to mute it. Okay, so can you hear me by phone loud enough if I speak really loudly?
We can hear you. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate your
Thanks, Mary.
patience.
Okay, let me flip over here to my PDF. So I did email in my comments. I spoke several times last year, and first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I did want to talk just about the best ideas that I had that you could put in with your sustainability work plan for 2025. The first one is our housing types in Sammamish aren't really working for us. They're 85% single family, 15% other. We were only about 10% multifamily when Kalahani joined in 2016. We need to do something to fix that. And it is the sole thing that I think can help us with a sustainable Sammamish for our finances. I don't think there's another thing that's going to actually fix the finances that you probably know about. So anyway, we need to increase the number of houses, increase the density, and we also need to make sure that we're not building in critical areas, because we've been doing that for a while, and those RUEs, or reasonable use exceptions, they're taking down 40 to 45 trees per lot trying to build. A lot of them are not able to build when they're in a geologic hazard area because it's just too hard, and it really should be unbuildable anyway, and those need to go into town center. So in support of also doing that, I had in 2019 submitted a docket to get it on the city. It's finally going to be part of the work plan this year for transfer of development rights. That's where you take lots like the critical areas, and if they are incentivized and you can get them into somewhere with the working TDR program, you can save the critical areas and make sure that your density is put into centers or town center, which is the best place, somewhere that has all the water, sewer, drainage, and utilities that you need, and roads too. And also it will make everything a lot more walkable, when it will reduce the building emissions. It will be less greenhouse gases and just about everything. So that's why it's one of the best ideas. The other thing I had submitted for December of last year is invasive plants are English ivy and Himalayan blackberry, which most people have heard about. Maybe they don't know what they are. The problem with them is they climb everything to try to get to sunlight and to populate themselves and bloom. And the higher they get, the more they suck back on the trees. So I had sent in a little 5-page PDF that said, hey, if you do not use weed killer and you do not use pesticides just by hand, you can just use pruning shears to cut back the ivy from climbing up any and all trees or other vegetation on your property. And you wouldn't want to go on other people's property, but that's what we do as native plant stewards in city properties. It really makes a difference and cuts down on it, and it will make a lot of the existing trees healthier than they are. So I think that's very important. And it's not required to remove these invasives by King County Code, but if we can teach people how to maintain them and maintain them well, it can make a big difference for our trees in our city. And then I would also like to have, for tree clearing and codes, you're not really supposed to cut back more than 1/3 of a plant per year, except for special types. And when you're pruning, you can only go up the bottom 25% on large trees. Really, the less you do that, the better, and you need to have an arborist. So those are some of the things that I thought about. I hope that you'll consider adding and read my email later and add to your plan for 2025. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mary.
Mary.
And I'll hang up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
So I have,
Karen, did you have a public comment this evening?
no other hands raised.
Okay.
Let her know.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a no. All right, so the 2024 year in review. Bring that up.
Yes.
these meetings should be, I was gonna say quick, but it should be short. Should be shorter than normal, because just doing a quick review. Like talk a little bit about 2024. Obviously, there's a huge change because we didn't exist last year this time. So just want to talk a little bit about that, the mission statement that we agreed on, and then kind of the accomplishments, and maybe just go around the room and kind of get some feedback from, you know, where we were and when we landed. Was it February was our first meeting?
That's correct.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to figure out, you know, who's who and what we were supposed to be doing and what direction were we going, and were we all, you know, going in the same direction. And I think even at the end of the year, we were still trying to figure some of that stuff out. So, but in all of that, I think we got a lot of stuff done, and Rose was able to, you know, check through a lot of the things that she and the city had wanted to do this year. So, you know, the mission statement of the City of Sammamish Sustainable Commission is committed to protecting the Sammamish natural environment and championing sustainable policies. You know, I think that's kind of key, because again, being 80% of the natural gas, which is the largest part of our footprint here in Sammamish, it is going to be championing the sustainable policies and practices, and just winning over it. You know, it's that winning over the hearts and minds of the residents, because if they don't change, if we don't change, you know, it's not going to make much of a difference what the city does themselves. So just wanted to touch a little bit on that mission, and then I was going to have Rose go over a little bit of the accomplishments of you know, where we started and kind of what you thought.
Absolutely. Yeah, so as part of this agenda item, we've put in that work plan that was kind of in draft form throughout the year as we figured out exactly what was happening when. But we really appreciated the commission's feedback on some of these bigger, important city documents, including the comprehensive plan, which was adopted, as Rachel mentioned, at our previous meeting, the critical areas ordinance, the fleet electrification study that was going on, as well as providing feedback on some of those climate action plan implementation actions. We really appreciated, you know, your feedback on some of those specific documents, as well as just the robust discussions that were happening throughout the year, meeting with PSC, talking through grid capacity, clean energy goals, and then that pretty detailed presentation on the building and energy codes, and understanding what is written into the code and how that helps advance our climate action plan goals. So looking through, you know, we had some really packed agendas. We were throwing a lot at you all, and you did a great job asking questions, digging into some of these documents and programs, and providing valuable feedback on behalf of the Sammamish community. So we really look to all of you to kind of be the voice of your community, give us that real-time feedback as people who live in the city, interact with your neighbors, and experience the effects of climate change and the effects of these programs that we're running firsthand. So again, some of those highlights, that fleet electrification study was huge. We were able to budget in 25 and 26 over $1 million to prepare for fleet electrification, get ready to install some of those EV chargers, and look forward, projecting out as we look at our 6-year capital improvement plan and how that comes into play. Some really great education pieces in there from PSC, talking through, you know, climate action plan development, understanding the amount of work that went into that, and the handoff to the commission, what that means for you all moving forward, and then for the broader Sammamish community. Another huge highlight that I was so grateful for all of your help, and I think was a really big win that needs to be celebrated, is that Sustainable Sammamish Guide. It was a heavy lift. That's a really hugely impactful resource and document for the community that went out to every household, and we are going to be handing out at every event moving forward this year and into the future. We'll be taking a fresh look at that next year, seeing if there's any updates that need to be happening, or, you know, items that may not be as relevant that could be taken out, areas to add additional information, links, documents, etc. But yeah, we really just wanted to take some time to talk through this, say thank you to all of you for the time, and really celebrate some of these wins, because sometimes with some of this curvature of the earth work, it can feel like, oh, I'm not doing as much as I want, or I'm not making as much of a difference, but you all accomplished a lot in this first year, and we're really excited about where the commission is headed for the next year. So that's kind of my brief spiel, but I did want to let all of you kind of provide some feedback, celebrate wins, you know, general review and feelings moving into this next year. And you've got a whole year under your belt as a commission, so that's huge.
So question, we talked about budget back in November or December. So was the budget for the sustainable aspects of the city that we've been working on, was that approved? Were there any changes to that for next year? Does that impact what our group's agenda is and your team's workload for this year?
Yeah, I think Rachel did a good job covering this at the last meeting, talking about some extra funds that were put forward for our building and development and code team, as well as myself, to kind of take a sustainable lens on some of the updates and work that's being done next year. As far as our budget ask went, everything was approved in the budget. We have the money that we need for Energy Smart East Side, for the Sustainable Sammamish Guide, for green power to enroll all of the city facilities in green power, which is great for offsetting some of our emissions and really setting an example for the community. We'll be covering this a little bit more at a future meeting, but we also did get an additional small bucket of funds for a program called Sustainability Ambassadors, which is a partnership with an organization that works directly with the schools and with student interns to help the city basically advance climate action plan in schools. So we're working on that scope of work, and we're going to come back to the commission at a later meeting, kind of talking about if there's opportunities for partnership or just giving more of an informational, this is what they're working on in parallel to what the commission will be working on.
The reason I asked is when you guys remember, we went through that that exercise where we were kind of scoring what we thought, what aspects of the climate action plan this group should focus on next year. And you remember some were more resource intensive than others. So I assume wherever we landed, those resources are covered in the
Yes.
budget. Okay, great.
Yeah. Rachel, did you have anything else to add with budget?
No, I just think I wanted to, kind of, there's a kind of a good tie in there to some of the stuff that Mary was saying about different housing types and encouraging more density, and, you know, and how that really relates to the work that you all are doing, and that will be a big part of that comp plan discussion that the DCD will come in next month and talk about. And some of the additional funds that Rose mentioned can go to help with some of that work, so layering additional, you know, potentially climate friendly programs and policies and codes to that sort of work, right? So for instance, you know, maybe we look at increasing the minimum EV hookups and that sort of thing in areas where we want more density to go in, right? That's one easy example of things, right? Another maybe more difficult and but potentially more impact if there's market for that is, you know, creating a green building incentive program type of thing. So definitely sort of how can we look at existing work plan items that maybe aren't in the sustainability bucket, right? But then overlay more sustainable programs and policies and codes on some of that other work too. So we're trying to think beyond the, you know, the sustainability work plan to see what else is on there, what else can we, you know, kind of bring under that umbrella, if that makes sense.
For the guide, so we're gonna, just so I make sure I understand timing, you said we're gonna update next year. Do you mean 2026 or take a look and refresh later?
We're gonna just take a brief look in 2025 because our plan is to print and send that guide out every fall to kind of align with the school year and folks getting back from whatever they're doing during the summer. So before we put that into print, we wanna just get everyone's eyes on it again.
That's fine. You just said next year, so I wasn't sure.
Okay, because it is
That's why I
early
like-
2025.
So that's what I'm trying to make sure. I
Yes,
understand.
thank you, yeah,
Thanks.
definitely.
I would like to say that I think something we ought to emphasize when we revise the guide is maybe devote a fair amount of pages or page to the Energy Smart East Side and also heat pump and the incentives and potential, you know, paybacks you can get from various agencies. Cause that's the one area I think we really need to attack hard. As I've said before, the other areas will, in some respects, as long as people like PSC come through on their part of the bargain, will almost take care of themselves.
Yeah,
Plus one.
Just following up on that comment, and I'm looking at, we've got an Energy Smart East Side workshop coming up in March.
yes, we do.
Will there be,
Yeah.
will Energy Smart appliances be covered under that workshop? So, you know, if there's a lot of momentum towards eliminating natural gas, we've talked about electrification of appliances, but I don't know that we've packaged information about that. Is that going to be covered in that workshop?
Not that workshop. So that workshop is specific to heat pump technology.
Okay.
And there will be a contractor who works with us through Energy Smart East Side there, answering questions, providing an overview for folks who might not be familiar with that technology, and then also providing basically an additional contractor discount
Okay.
For folks who attend that. I think that would be a good opportunity to focus on in future social media posts and at some of our event outreach, you know, some of those postcard mailers that we had discussed,
Yeah.
maybe having one specifically dedicated to smaller appliances and some of those easy fixes.
I think so.
Yeah.
There's a stigma. I'll speak for my generation that, you know, electric ranges were not the best. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of electric utilities that I think have been greatly improved, but I don't know.
Yeah. That might be a good opportunity too for commissioner testimonials, for you to say, hey, I switched this and this is the benefits I saw and this has been my user experience. Cause a lot of folks don't want to give up their gas ranges
Right.
and we can't make them.
Well,
We
especially
can only talk
especially
about
during-
how great it was when we switched.
during the windstorm, when we didn't have power for
Yeah.
6 days, all we had I had was our gas range. Otherwise,
Yeah,
we've been barbecuing 7 days a week.
totally.
Yeah, that, and, you know, I was thinking about this commission during that, you know, 6, 7 day power outage, right? And so, you know, we've got a couple of gas fireplaces, gas water heater, gas stove.
Mhm.
And so we were able to stay warm, cook meals, and, you know, we don't have a house generator. So it was one of those things where, you know, any momentum I had with, you know, convincing my neighbors that, you know, they should go electric, kind of, you know, they're all like, well, what would we do? You know, well, if we're all electric right now. And I was like, there's not much to say, right? I mean, so that's tough. And so it would be interesting to see how that kind of impacted, you know, people's ability and what are we doing about it as the city of Sammamish? Like, what is the council doing about improving the power, right? Because
Yeah.
those two things are gonna go hand in hand when especially when it's that fresh. So if you went out and talked to some HOAs, you know, this month or next month, that's all that they're gonna talk about, right? Is, well, if the city of Sammamish isn't helping us kind of storm-proof the power grid.
Yeah.
What's really my incentive? Because, you know, we lose power, and I mean, you know, one of the richest zip codes in the state of Washington, we lose power for 2 or 3 days every year, right? So, and I don't know if I'm on a weird thing, part of the grid. I'm almost Redmond, so I think we're forgotten about it sometimes. But you know, what is the city doing about, you know, storm proofing that? Because if that doesn't get any better, we have these power outages, you know, every year. It's a hard sell.
Absolutely.
Because again, 6 or 7 days without electricity. So we should, as part of our kind of agenda, I think we should, one of the future ones, have that discussion with that part of the city, right? What is the plan to kind of storm-proof our grid?
Well,
That goes
and we
to
need
the-
to kind of back up from that, because actually the city doesn't really have a role in that.
Yeah, it's
That's a
PSC.
that's PSC.
But isn't it the relationship that the city has with PSC and puts, you know, 'cause but who's talking to PSC about that, right? I guess that's where I'm going.
Right, I mean, but ultimately, I want to be really clear about
Yes,
who's responsible, like if we want to talk about undergrounding, which is the way to get to that. It's the ratepayers that will pay that, and it's prohibitively expensive, right? So So some of the things we could be talking about though are some of the other technologies that are out there, right? Like and you all probably know this better than I do, but the solar stuff, the Tesla power bank technology, right? There's some other things that folks can do to harden themselves for when that does happen. That's probably gonna be more realistic than going through and undergrounding the grid.
But to your point, David, PSC has a team that consistently goes out and does risk evaluations of the grid to see what would be vulnerable that could go out in terms of the storm. And it'd be interesting for us to understand, well, what did we learn from the last power outage that PSC has improved upon in the Sammamish area?
Is there an opportunity for city of Sammamish to implement a, because most of our power loss was just trees falling on knocking.
Lines, yeah.
And is there, like, from a city of Sammamish, could we implement, or I don't know if we actually have, how far off those power lines do those trees have to be cut back? And could we implement something that says, hey, we're not gonna, doesn't look like we're gonna underground anytime soon. Let's increase and I know now you're balancing, canopy.
I was gonna say, that's
I think
Right.
during the tree code update, I anticipate that we would come to the commission with some of those
Okay.
pros and cons and receive some feedback as well. So yeah, it's within balance,
'Cause
you know,
that helps
making
the-
sure you
The
maintain
other part of
healthy
what we're trying to do
trees.
is, right, and, because if we say, well, I'm not really sure what we're doing, it's all PSC, then it's kind of a dead end discussion sometimes with.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know where the city is on this, but in my world, when we disturb and remediate area of land, we can offset that with wetland credits where we're creating habitat somewhere else. And so does the city evaluate that if a lot of trees need to be taken down to preserve power infrastructure? Is that offset by planting somewhere else in Sammamish?
It really depends, right? So if there is an immediate threat, right, that doesn't need to necessarily be mitigated,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, if there are trees that need to come down that are maybe not an immediate threat, then there are mitigation strategies that you can do, right? And one of the things that's been talked about in this community is tree ranking and things like that. But it's been an interesting couple of months,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
For a lot of different reasons. This
Yeah.
community loves its trees
Yeah.
very much, and yet we've also got a lot of requests, can you please cut down those trees right now, right?
Yeah.
So it's a balance, to Rose's point, and I think she's right, the tree ordinance, when we work on that, that is also very much tied into the WUI, the wildlife urban interface, right, which is also, one of our earlier conversations about Los Angeles and things like that, right? All of this stuff is gonna sort of converge, and then that's really gonna help us update the urban forest master plan.
Yeah, and being smart about it, looking at, because all the studies that were done in the urban forest management plan identified certain tree types that thrive well in our community. Those may not be the trees that are dying and falling down on the power lines, right? So.
Yeah, and I also wanna acknowledge what this community went through was pretty unprecedented. We haven't had a storm like that in the 25 years that at least the city's been in existence, right? I know that I'm not at all discounting that you lose power, once a year, but for that stretch and for the hundreds and hundreds of trees that we saw down in this community, that hasn't happened in the 25 years we've been in existence. So again, back to Rose's point about the balance.
Having measured.
And I don't want to get too sidetracked because this wasn't on our agenda, so, we could probably talk about, but
It seems, city's got lobbyists. It seems to me that maybe they should be tasked with talking with the state legislature. State wants to really reduce greenhouse gases. Obviously, we all know there's a big impetus, it has been for the last several years with new legislation. But they're gonna be faced with the same pushback that David's talking about, where people are gonna go, oh, you want me to convert to electricity use, what about power outages? So the state, which obviously has more clout than the city, I think they need to interact with our utility providers and find out what their plan is. I mean, the point you made about the PSC's probably does a threat analysis after an after action report, so to speak, about what happened. Where were the trees that went down? Why did those trees and not other trees go down? What can they do to mitigate that for the next one. Because I'm suspecting we might be seeing another bomb cyclone in our lifetime.
I wanna talk about a different one, I think, David, that you brought up without bringing up, but. One thing that I think is super helpful in getting the discourse and changing hearts and minds, like education, like when you're outraged for the 7 days, like, can the city do anything? Right? Like, you don't have to, in the moment, you're not gonna change anything, and that's fine, but like in the guide, you can have like a FAQs on like, what happens when the power goes out? What is the city's role? You know, like, how do we try to help push along and prioritize, and how do we push on PSE? But ultimately, PSE is the thing, and the best way to get it to change is to call PSE rather than call here, because they're wasting their time.
I did see a lot of frustration online
Yeah.
about how come we haven't heard from the mayor? How come we haven't heard
Exactly.
from,
And
you know, and what are they doing about it? And there was a lot, I'm sure.
people
Right.
should be allowed to vent, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Absolutely,
that's the
absolutely.
problem, but we can take opportunities when it's not raw.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Through the things like the sustainability guide to be like, in the emergency case, like in these cases, like. When we have the blizzards, the city has lots of control, right? We own the snowplows, we get to say where they go. When you're not getting your street called, you call the city, or cloud, you call the city and you
Right.
complain, because we can do it. When there's a power outage. For better or for worse, the city can't do much about it. I think we have the ability to do like some tree stuff and cut down trees, maybe not.
Not if they're on a line.
Yeah, there you
just-
go. Okay.
Right, I mean,
Perfect, so,
and-
but that's it.
right,
I don't know.
Yep,
Ah.
no, and we were really, and we've been public with this, so I'm not speaking out of turn, is we were very frustrated with PSE through that
Yeah.
whole fun, because we literally cruised running around trying to find them in town so that then we could come afterwards, right? Because we can't do anything if there's a line down. We can't touch it, we can't get near it, nothing,
But
right?
those kinds of
So,
things people don't know,
Yep.
and
Yep,
it helps set the stage or
Yep.
understand like what's happening.
Yep.
There's only so much.
well, we're
it.
starting a new Sammamish City 101 kind of university for this year, which is a series of social media posts about what does the mayor do, right? Because we're not a strong mayor form of government, and so that, right, what is the role of a city manager? And then what does the city do and what does the city not do? So back to our discussion last month about following our social media and amplifying our social media. I'll put that little plug in there. You'll start to see that coming up, I think starting next week. And that is part of that goal.
Yes,
is
I
to
love
get
it. That's
get residents better. And I think that's a really good idea to fold some of that into the sustainability guide.
I'm taking notes.
All right.
Great. Brian, did you have anything to share from this past year on the commission? I know we didn't have you here the whole time, but
I mean, yeah, I like how we came with a group consensus, like for like planning, and I really liked how we worked together. And we like at the beginning, we were like maybe unclear, but then as we went along, we started like getting more things out and like trying to come up with different events and like solve different problems.
okay.
And are you taking some of this back to your school and?
Yeah, I'm taking it back to the youth board, and like I'm trying to like learn, since I'm in apes, so like I'm trying to correlate like my apes class with this, and like trying to think of some solutions to
Sorry, what's
Is it AP Science?
AP environmental.
Oh.
That's the class that first got me interested in all this. Cool. Thanks, Brian. Okay, well, just to finish out the year in review, I wanted to provide an updated outreach metrics kind of report. You know, we had seen this in partial completion. I believe it was in July. So I just wanted to let you all know we had a couple outreach events in the winter, really more centered around Energy Smart East Side. These were case studies and some specific targeted outreach to folks, understanding where not just Sammamish is, but some of the other East Side communities in terms of their attitudes and understanding of home electrification, weatherization, energy efficiency, and HVAC technology. And then finished out the newsletter year with a focus on transportation and then waste reduction leading into the holidays. So I feel like it was really successful. We spoke to just over 900 folks. That is an estimate. I didn't have a clicker at every single event I was at. But for the most part, I would say the summer and spring is really our busiest time. So looking back on this year and thinking about how can we engage more folks, have more meaningful conversations during these events, and
What's-
look forward into the next year.
What's our population?
65,000, 66,000. Yeah.
So we got about 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
So-
And you know, some of these people I'm sure are repeats.
All but the
Yeah,
social
but-
media is.
Okay, yeah.
Social media, yeah, before we do, and looking at both of them,
Yes,
well, I love them. I pushed for a lot of this at the beginning, to be
Yeah.
able to look at some numbers, so thank you very much.
of course.
I'm hopeful to see as we go, some like your metrics and stuff. I don't know if we have anything for 2023, but I would love it. Like if we would like to be get more, less.
The impressions, yeah.
Yeah,
21.
no, here, yeah, down here is perfect, but up there, like. I don't know
Yeah,
if we tracked last
for
year.
We just
events.
started
Okay,
sustainability
perfect.
this past year for all intents and purposes.
Okay. awesome.
Yeah.
And question, waste reduction, are those the household hazardous waste events that are at,
No, so that is separate. So it
Okay.
says, oh, okay. So I didn't include the number of people that went to our recycling events because sometimes that's like multiple hundreds of
Yeah,
folks.
yeah.
I think that is important metrics and I'd be happy to provide that, but I felt like it might kind of skew the actual tangible conversations about sustainability because a lot of those are just folks literally driving through and dropping off recycling. So I hear what you're saying. I think that would be good to include in a future report.
Yeah, I mean, we can think about, I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's important community engagement. People are
Yeah.
actually making the effort to recycle these materials, right? They're taking time out of their day to drive,
Yeah.
to wait online and.
And that might be a great opportunity next year if we have those little postcards or pamphlets that we hand one out to
Those are
every
coming.
bar. You know,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
we can do
that.
that.
So
Yeah, I
I'd be
love it.
happy to partner with our recycling consultant who helps put on those events.
Mhm.
I'm not as involved in solid waste. I'll just be fully transparent. Our public works team
Mhm.
manages most of our public works, or sorry, most of our solid waste, including the solid waste contract.
Mhm.
So I work with Public Works, but I'm not necessarily the lead for all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, some of that, and I don't know how you track that, but some of that is actually avoidance of, waste sent to landfill, right?
oh yeah, we
So-
have some really great numbers. It's like tons, and I'm not just saying tons, like literal measurable
Hundreds of
tons,
tons.
Yeah.
hundreds of
Right.
tons
Yeah.
at these collection events.
Yeah,
And those are in partnership with Issaquah. So when you're looking at those numbers, that does need to be considered, but
Sure.
they're hugely successful, so successful and to the point where, and I think I had shared this with the commission previously, we had looked at partnering with, I believe it was Ridwell. And when they heard and saw the actual numbers of how many tons of electronics and other debris that we had, they said, we actually can't work with you to that scale. That would overwhelm us, but thank you so much for reaching out and good luck. So that was great. It was
Yeah.
kind of a double-edged, good to get that feedback, but disappointing that there wasn't an opportunity to partner with them.
yeah. That's great.
And I do want to note the social media engagement did go up. When we had first looked at these numbers in July, it was about 3.8, right on par with 2023. And through the end of the year, some of that I'm sure is attributed to the bomb cyclone and some of the events. But
Yes.
we're moving in a positive direction, so
Yeah,
let's
the day
keep it
before the
going.
bomb cyclone, we had 1,123,000 after 1.8.
Yeah, so, but yeah, so we're gonna continue tracking this. In a future meeting, I'd be happy to share the recycling event numbers, because I do think that should be celebrated and, I understand wanting to know.
Yeah, no, they're great events and I've only seen them increase in participation in the years that I've been going.
Yeah.
And then I've asked for it in the past, maybe I'll get it one day, maybe I won't, I don't know, but like getting a breakdown of like what type of content is getting engaged with, which is
Mhm.
more important than the impressions,
Mhm.
would be super useful, I think, not for us, we don't do it, but for you guys to know. So I'll push
Yeah.
for it to be like, is it videos, like whatever.
Yeah.
If people engage, because we should be producing.
It's all
more of that
Rose's
content.
Instagram.
Exactly.
Video, training videos.
Anecdotally, I know that on Instagram, when you do film reels,
Uh-huh.
those tend to get more engagement. And so Angie and I have been working. I mean, you've seen some of the recent ones. We've got another one scheduled for this year. Talking about, it's gonna be like a little sock puppet video. It's really silly, but it's like basically just put on socks in the winter instead of turning up your thermostat.
Right.
So
Love
yeah, I'll work with Angie through this next year to try to track some of those. I can't promise that we'll have every single metric, but we can definitely get some more specific breakdown than what we've got here.
Awesome.
Yeah, because this is.
Angie's the comms person?
Yes.
Spoke to us a while ago, okay, yeah.
I assume that's also part of why thinking about that she came. Cause she wasn't here all year, right? Wasn't she like a mid-year hire or something like that?
Yeah, our previous comms person had left, so,
Cause I recall that being the
yeah.
reason for the drop in 20, or the call out for why 2023 dropped so dramatically was the comms. You lost that. You lost somebody working.
Yep.
And also because the newsletter started back up in 2023, we didn't have the
We didn't.
newsletter, which is why engagement you'll see was a lot higher in 2022. A lot of folks really do rely on that physical newsletter
Yeah.
that goes to your home, and then when you don't have that, they turn to online. Yeah, that's great. One thing I just wanted to highlight from this before we move on to the next agenda item is those major outreach events. So as I mentioned, spring and summer are our busiest times. This list here, these are the ones that we really want to encourage you all to come get involved at. These are the ones where we speak to the most amount of community members, we have the most visibility, and some of those better conversations as well. Specifically Earth Day and the Sustainable Sammamish Farmers Market were two of our most successful events this year. Arbor Day was a partnership with an elementary school, but we're looking to you all, and I will be working with you in the next couple meetings to figure out a specific Arbor Day event that we can involve the commission in as well.
Can we get those dates actually sent out like times and stuff as early as possible? So that we
Yes,
can put them
yeah,
on, like, I can put them on the calendar and like the applicable like kids thing, I don't know.
absolutely.
just
We don't have a date for Arbor Day, but I did just learn that Earth Day is gonna be happening April 19th.
Okay.
So I will send out an email post-meeting.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
You bet.
And if you need people to like be on reels or whatever for the city, I'll volunteer myself certainly.
Great.
Good to come do dumb things with socks. What else is needed?
That's awesome. Anyone else?
My wife loves big cuppy
Oh,
socks.
I'll hope for Earth
Steve,
Day
Nick?
as well, definitely, I enjoyed that last year.
Cool.
Is the city gonna do another like Earth Day related video? I know we had the testimonials for the city anniversary, but are you gonna
That
film
was-
any of the Earth Day events?
That was specific for the Silver Jubilee that
Yeah.
happened this year, but I don't see why not. I mean, we could work with our AV folks. I think the main thing is making sure we have some budget for that.
Mhm.
But an Earth Day celebration or even just commissioner reels, you know, talking about how great Earth Day was, encouraging the community to come and really take some of those sustainable behavior changes as a takeaway from that event.
Mhm.
Yeah. Great suggestions. Keep them coming, guys. I love this. Cool. Any other thoughts on this before we move on?
Just on the sustainable Sammamish market,
Mhm.
I wasn't able, or the farmers, I wasn't able to go to those events this past summer, but what's the objective? Like, does it change every week, or is it just, this group kind of hanging out and people want to talk about what the city's doing, and then we have sort of like the action plan talking points? Is that the format, or?
Yeah, so this past year, because it was kind of our first year really getting our presence out there, it was really more generalized. We had a bunch of different resources, from the flexible transportation option of community van and Metroflex. We had some flyers on that, to encouraging folks to sign up for the Sammamish Climate Challenge, which we know was not as successful, to information on Energy Smart East Side when we had that off the ground. So it was kind of a one-stop shop for everything sustainability, but I think there could be an opportunity with commissioner buy-in. I can only do about one farmer's market a month, but I could absolutely help facilitate additional farmers markets if we wanted to focus on, drought resistant landscaping specifically for one market, and then focus on Energy Smart East Side for another market. I think there would be an opportunity, but it would be kind of a collective.
If that's where we want to go, maybe to Tim's point, at an upcoming meeting, we could say, if this is something the commission supports, then let's build the schedule out so that,
Yeah,
on July X, David is gonna be there and he's gonna focus on, whatever aspect. we're
whatever
looking at.
topic, yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Absolutely.
we just kind of build out a schedule. That way, then we would know it would be covered, and then we participate, we know what we're there to talk about and present. And
yeah, I think that's great. And on that same note, I think part of that schedule could also be those quarterly outreach events. And saying, this Q1 is gonna be David and Tim presenting to the Sammamish Chamber of Commerce on X date. And I would set those up ahead of time and make sure that we had a good spread of commissioners to sign up. But I think there's absolutely an opportunity for that. Once we get those new commissioners on board, I think we'll be able to really hammer down some of those dates in a more concrete plan.
Okay, yeah, and if there's a way that the schedule could be transparent so that we've all got access to it, we could see who's going to what event.
Yeah, I think that's something we would have to do at a meeting, because if we have a document that everyone has editing purposes on, that is technically a meeting with a quorum. But it's something we could hammer out and then I could send out via
Yeah,
email and
yeah.
everyone could
Good.
access.
But I'm like Tim, I live and die by my schedule, like if I don't have it scheduled,
Yeah.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah.
Shouldn't that evening meeting in March be one of our major outreach events?
yes. Yeah, that's a good point. I would say so. Energy Smart East Side Outreach. Yeah, this was more looking back
Yeah.
at the last year, but
Okay,
moving
okay.
forward, yes, I
Yeah.
would say that
All right.
absolutely counts. And that's through our partnership. It's not technically, I guess I would say that is city sponsored. So yeah,
I mean, let's just take advantage of the opportunity.
Right.
And people will show up and we can talk of heat pumps in particular and other aspects, the climate, the sustainability in general,
yeah,
take advantage of it.
absolutely. Thank you, Steve. Okay,
Now, that's gonna be in our library.
the heat pump workshop will be at City Hall,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here.
March 26th.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So that year in review kind of ties into, again, looking back, big picture, citywide work plan. These were the items for climate and sustainability set by the city council. I'm happy to say we've completed all of our objectives for the year, with the exception of 2 that are just wrapping up, actually this month and then a little bit into February. So we got the Sustainable Sammamish Guide, we joined the East Side Climate Partnership, we had some amazing successful recycling events and explored some additional partnerships. We completed that fleet electrification assessment, we ran a green purchasing pilot program with parks, and we'll be rolling that out to other departments this year, kind of on a rolling basis. And then we established the Sustainability Commission. We applied for Tree City USA. That application is still pending, so I don't have an update yet. I actually checked on that today, and I think they should let us know by the end of this month, but it's really just up to the staff members at Arbor Day. And then our right-of-way tree study is also wrapping up this month. So we'll have a report out once we get that final report from Bassett, our consultants. And this is specific to our right-of-way trees and obviously was somewhat impacted by the bomb cyclone that occurred. So we'll have an update coming later, either February or March.
We literally did an inventory of every city-owned right-of-way tree the week before.
Oh.
I walked down to Met Market the other day, I'm like, oh, there's one that's not.
Yeah.
Wow.
So some unfortunate timing, but it still did give us some great information and is going to be incredibly helpful to our maintenance lead, Dan, and his teams.
Well, you got some great pre and post storm data.
Yeah.
It's now getting post storm, right? You know exactly which trees fell and what kind of trees, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Well, then, you gotta do the post trees.
Right.
review.
You did an inventory, I believe, of what trees did fall, how many?
Well,
You
we
made an estimate.
have some knowledge of, like, within our parks, we know
Yeah.
that there are 300 trees that we had to touch in order to deal with. There are more trees that are down, like at preserves and stuff, that we'll just
Okay.
leave where they are.
So based on that data, has anybody bothered in the city to extrapolate that to the city's tree canopy and figure out how many trees citywide got blown over?
Not
Assuming-
yet, because we are literally still cleaning up, and we will be probably through the end of first quarter,
Well,
so.
I did a back of the envelope calculation. I figured it's about 5,000 trees.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me.
That's crazy.
So what
Yeah.
percentage of the canopy do you think we lost?
Oh, I have no idea how many trees we've got, but if you look in the urban forest management document, that Davies study gave us a percentage of the tree canopy in the city. So I knew how many acres of trees were the city's, are in the city's footprint. And the city went around and, they, as Rachel said, they counted the number of trees that they had to touch. And they're 360 some odd acres or whatever it is. So there's about 6,000 plus acres of trees mostly in the city.
Yeah, we haven't done
That's
any of that.
it's a long,
Yeah.
very long extrapolation. So, you know, there's probably a lot of photos in that number.
I'll have to take a look at the report again. Yeah, all the
Yeah.
data's in here. There's 16,000 street trees in 2017.
Street trees are not necessarily the same as the right of way trees that we
Yeah.
inventoried.
Yeah.
I would guess the number of trees in the city, it's in the millions.
Okay. Well, looking forward to 2025, 2026. I know you all have seen this before, so this is just kind of the final piece of the conversation that the commission has had over the last two meetings, talking about prioritizing. Here you can see all of the items on my work plan, all of which were funded under the city's budget adoption. E5 specifically looking at climate action plan implementation, and then staff and council were looking to the commission to help us prioritize the many actions in the plan to some tangible bites that we can be taking out of that in 2025. So I've worked with Rachel to talk through a little bit more specifically what, it's one thing when it's written in the climate action plan, but what that actually looks like for staff work. And then get some feedback, if there's any additional suggestions for example, regional and local agencies that may have options on electric vehicle car share that you may be aware of that we are not. I put a couple there from my initial research. But yeah, just seeing if there's anything that you all think could be added to the description, or that you would be willing to say, hey, I know a lot about this. This is something I want to be involved in. Or this is an opportunity for the commission to participate in X way.
And based on discussions we had with Rachel, that was probably the one we weren't sure it was going to advance. And
Yes.
if these companies are even interested in the partnership, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, if we make some calls and there's no interest, then we can move to the one of the secondary actions.
Yeah.
Right? So Rose specifically kept the secondary actions in here so that if we get through those other ones and they're a no-go or they're easy or, whatever, that we're still moving along on what you all prioritize.
The reason we had a discussion, somebody mentioned that we have one of the highest EV ownerships.
We do.
In the Sammamish area, so does it
Or
make
probably
sense
in
to
the
have a
nation.
car
US.
share in the
Yeah,
US,
yeah.
right? So, yeah, I don't know if a car share program would be successful, right?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I think given the high number of vehicles, period, per capita in Sammamish.
Yeah.
There probably isn't a market yet for a car share.
Right.
If and when town center and other like more dense areas where
Yeah.
people who necessarily don't own cars, but right now the car ownership per household is also a high number,
Right, yeah.
so.
So as you see here in the description, there are some of these actions do involve partnership with the sustainability ambassadors, really targeting the schools and some of the younger folks, and also having that youth voice to some of our outreach. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the summer there is an opportunity at a farmer's market booth where you've got a Sammamish staff member, a sustainability commission member or two, and then one or two youth members as well, to really try to engage the community and engage some of the folks that may not always stop at our booth, but if they see someone their age or someone that they recognize from class, maybe they'd be more likely to stop by.
Right, Brian, you gotta bring your friends.
Time at some of the markets this year, it was good. Yeah, so that's what that first two look like. I'm gonna leave that up for a moment. If there's any other feedback or questions, this is also a time to ask questions if you're unclear on anything as well.
How does the description for BEU 4.1 match the action? Well, it's the action is identify grants and partnerships, and the description is about outreach. I mean, I'm fine with the outreach, but I don't understand the tie.
Yeah, so there's not many grant opportunities coming up in the short term, especially not for a community that has kind of the makeup that we have. So that's why we're kind of taking, the climate action plan is a wonderful document, but some of those actions are not as feasible, at least in this current biennium or as things stand currently. So looking and really taking that into like an actual tangible work plan.
Okay.
So yeah, so a community energy conservation and GHG emissions reduction education program. We could put together like an education program specifically, but I think what would be more impactful for our community and a better use of the resources that we have available is focusing on expanding our social media outreach, having some targeted education campaigns around Energy Smart East Side, around energy efficiency. And again, partnering with sustainability ambassadors and some of our regional partners who are already doing that work rather than kind of reinventing the
So
wheel.
the action plan, just start with the word develop and get rid of everything in front of develop,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that. and I get it.
Yeah,
And I think that's a great spot to be putting our investment is in the outreach, right? 'Cause that's what we're talking about all the
exactly.
time,
So this is me,
align with that.
yeah, this is staff translating the
Creative.
climate action plan into truly tangible implementation. And then Rachel and I will work to figure out exactly which quarter each of these actions is going to be occurring.
This isn't quite on topic, but I've got a question. K4C is, there's a lot of cities and they've
Yes,
signed up for that.
yes.
Have they ever thought about the King County contingent part of that? Having some sort of because I imagine all of these cities by now, or a majority of them, probably have a climate action plan and have a committee similar to this.
Not all, but most, yeah.
Yeah, well, enough of them so that have they ever thought about having some sort of I don't know, symposium, workshop, whatever, to kind of share best practices or ideas or
They do
something
that, regularly with the electeds. And so with there's a 2 or 3 city council members per K4C city
Yeah.
that participated, so they do it at that level, and then there's a lot of collaboration at the staff level, but I don't know K4C as a convener beyond electeds and staff.
Yeah, I will say they often do share best practices and model ordinances, model code, model programs at the K4C meetings that I attend as a staff member. Whether that's critical areas, whether that's climate action plan upgrades. We do a greenhouse gas emissions inventory through K4C, so they do provide the same baseline for all cities in the K4C of how we are calculating and communicating about our emissions profile, which our climate action plan was based on. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. I think like Rachel said, the electeds and staff level is what King County has the capacity to support at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea though, to be a convener beyond those 2 groups.
Yeah, it would be a very big room, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, but and I imagine if you bring all of those heads together in a room, there's gonna be, oh, well, I never thought of that idea, kind of moments.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where your role in all these different cities play, right? You kind of share that information,
Yeah, that's,
because that's one of the first questions I asked you is, how come we're not, the commission isn't meeting with the Redmond and Issaquah commissions and sharing information? Hey, what are you guys doing? What, here's what we're doing. And that's where you said, hey, there is a representative that walks and talks like you in Issaquah and Redmond, and you do meet with them and share kind of what we're doing.
at least weekly, yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah,
Wow.
through the East Side Climate Partnership, we
Okay.
have weekly check-ins. It's either East Side Climate Partnership or Energy Smart East Side, but it's all the same folks on the east side. Yeah, I was telling Rachel, sometimes I work with them more than I work with our own city staff, because there's only one of me, but there's 7 of us collectively.
If, here's a thought for this year, if, something really interesting or significant comes up in those conversations, maybe you could give us an update in our commission
Yeah.
meeting if you think it's appropriate and it impacts our implementation of the climate action plan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd be happy to. I can
Okay.
bring more of that forward.
okay. I mean, I'm not every meeting, but there's like some golden nugget that comes out of your collaboration that we
Yeah.
can benefit from.
I think a big one when it's completed is that greenhouse gas emissions inventory that I had mentioned. They're gonna be bringing that to us by the end of the first quarter this year.
Mhm.
And they'll be working with me specifically, and then I'd be happy to share that with you all as well. You know, what numbers went into that. Steve, I know you're a numbers guy, how those numbers may or may not compare to the 2019 inventory that was
It's
done.
complicated to pull that data together.
Yeah, and what the implications are moving forward for us reaching our goals and how we're doing. So, yeah, great suggestion. Thank you. Okay, just the last couple here, you know, working with Sammamish stewards on low impact drought resistant landscape development. They're already doing a lot of this work, so really leveraging some of the partnerships and existing community groups that we have, amplifying their voices to further community education.
And that's a
then-
perfect example, like for call out boxes in the new edition of the Sammamish Sustainability Guide, right? We
Sammamish stewards say,
have a focus on, you know, that low impact drought resistant landscaping that you all asked us to prioritize.
So as a handout at Earth Day, is that what you're thinking? How that information be disseminated?
could
or-
be a handout at Earth Day or some kind of interactive activity at
Yeah.
Earth Day. As Rachel mentioned, it could be a specific call out in the Sustainable Sammamish Guide that we choose to prioritize this year, whereas maybe this year, 2025, whereas maybe next year we have a specific call out for waste.
Mhm.
And we're kind of checking those climate action plan actions off
Okay.
as we go.
So you're thinking about a theme for Earth Day this year or something?
I think that
Yeah.
we could absolutely
Do
do.
you
a
remember how
theme.
it was chaos? We had like 300 kids and they all wanted stuff and spinning the wheel and.
It will continue to be that way.
I
We'll
know.
just have a theme for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun, but it was kind of hectic there for a little bit.
It was, and the more commissioners we have, the less hectic it is for each of us individually, so, yeah. Sure, and then that last,
Four wheels.
Yeah.
yeah, and then that last one focusing on transportation, and we're gonna be working pretty heavily with sustainability ambassadors on that, because as we all know, that school commute, parents driving their children individually is not only a traffic congestion issue, but it's also an emissions and vehicle miles traveled consideration.
I think we also have an opportunity with your all prioritization of TLU 5.1 is this year Public Works is also doing the bike and pedestrian master plan. And so there's a great dovetail, obviously, into all of that, and we'll make sure when the opportunity is correct that you all have more information about that, because that's really, the more that we can increase that infrastructure, right, and the more alternatives will using their vehicles.
And then those secondary
But
actions.
is it just about education, or, because one of the goals in the climate action plan is actually to reduce vehicle miles
Mhm.
traveled, but I don't know how you measure that.
That is part of that greenhouse gas emissions inventory. They do extrapolate transportation emissions from DMV car registration data that they get for, you know, when you, each year you understand how many miles a car has traveled when you pay your tabs, et cetera. So they do take that data and calculate vehicle miles traveled for each of the cities.
Interesting.
So we'll have an update on that. I think part of that ties into the comprehensive plan and some of the development transportation plans that the city has in the longer term. And then some of that is education, you
Mhm.
know, folks understanding, oh, if I don't have to drive my car, if I can share this ride with a neighbor, that does make a tangible difference. So the city can't tell people not to drive their cars, but we can educate them why it's better not to.
And create the infrastructure so they have alternatives, right, which is
Well,
what the bike and pet. plan is
Some
all about.
cities like Manhattan are actually charging people to drive.
I
their
did see
vehicles,
that,
right? It's
yeah.
$9 if you go below 60.
Congestion pricing at $2.28.
Yeah.
That would be
Love it, let's
great.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are things, you know,
Yeah.
we always appreciate suggestions and trying to tackle a lot of different data points at once.
Yeah.
BMT is one of those that's a little bit complicated.
It is hard to
Do it
capture
right. Yeah.
sustainability.
For sure.
It's something we've got to figure out a way to gamify the, you know, like how often you cycle, you know, how green are you, right? You get a badge once you get to a certain level, right? I mean, you know, people are very competitive, and if you figure out a way, partner with, you know, like Strava, you know, it's an app that tracks how many
Yeah.
miles you bicycle, right? And so, you know, figure out a way to incentivize, because you can't pay them, right? And you can't, you know, reduce their, give them a discount on their their electric rate, but figure out a way where, because again, there's too many people that love their cars in this zip code to give it up is, save the planet, I think. And so I think there's just, how do you get them to get into a competitive environment? You get a badge that you can put on your Facebook profile because, you've gotten to a certain status of how your carbon footprint is dropped X%. I don't know. Because otherwise it's just, it's just like talking to a wall, I think sometimes. When it comes to, especially again, full circle on the bomb cyclone, right? Nobody right now you're not going to convince anybody to switch over to electric in the next 2 weeks, right? When it's still that raw from, I just sat in a cold house for a week because we had no electricity, right?
True.
But I think, so the whole point is we got to get creative. How do we incentivize without, there's no stick and there's no real carrot, right? And so how do you move people? And I think your guide that we're going to go over here is key part of that, right? The behavior change, that first one on your 4-point bullet list.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. That is, well, actually, let's quickly go back to the agenda here.
Did you also, were you gonna go over that?
Yes,
real
I
quickly?
am. Yeah. Let me just pull this back up. Really quickly, just wanted to give you all a peek ahead at next year.
This year.
This year. Oh, it's been a long day, sorry. Peek ahead at this year. When I was creating this, it was next year. So next time we are gonna have someone from DCD come speak to the comprehensive plan and some of the sustainability implications, both longer term and that they were going for with that. Talk about the pilot program, hammer down some specific dates with those new commissioners, and then start thinking about Earth Day and Arbor Day, what that might look like in terms of events, focus, community engagement, potential giveaway items, really start kind of the ball rolling with that. And then in March, we'll bring forward the Sustainability Ambassador's scope of work and really dive into that Solarize program that Rachel had brought forward at the previous meeting. We're hoping to have that King County greenhouse gas emissions inventory report by April. That may end up moving out depending on that consultant's timeline and when we can get meetings scheduled, because I need to make sure I fully understand that before I bring it to you all. And then in June, we'll be taking a fresh look at the Sustainable Sammamish Guide to get that updated in time for September. And then the last two things I wanted to highlight for you, we've already kind of covered, but there is an Energy Smart East Side neighborhood workshop scheduled at City Hall on March 26th. Please start talking to your neighbors, your friends, your HOA groups, your kids, parents at soccer, whatever that looks like. Start spreading the word. We really want to have good attendance at this first workshop. We encourage you all to attend as well. If you're curious about heat pumps, maybe you already have a heat pump, but you want to learn a little bit more or have better information that you can use to talk to your friends and neighbors, make those connections. And then Arbor Day, we're going to hammer down a date in April at our next meeting, but I wanted to put that on your radars now to start thinking about Arbor Day events. I've seen both from other cities and from some individual research is it's not really the best time of year to do tree planting, but tree giveaways and having folks keep those trees in pots in their yard to then plant during the best time of year to plant, which is fall. Or an Arbor Day kind of like ceremony recognition with city council where you could plant one ceremonial tree. That's kind of what we did with the elementary school last year. You could do some kind of art installation with city council or a school group. We're open to ideas. I'm going to bring some more tangible, fleshed out ideas at the next meeting, but I really do welcome any ideas that you all have as well. It doesn't need to just be coming from me. And then also start thinking about a date at our next meeting as well, because we want to make sure we have as many commissioners in attendance as we can.
Rose, what time is that workshop on the 26th?
I believe it is at 6 p.m.
It's at City Hall?
Yes,
Here. Okay.
should have put that time on there. But I will send that out as Tim had requested with the events that we do have already scheduled, including Earth Day.
6:30.
6:30, there you
Oh,
go.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Time and location will be super helpful.
Can you
Yes.
just add it to our, like a calendar invite?
Yeah, I can invite your city emails.
Yeah,
Mhm.
as you find them out, just put our city emails on there, and at least we got a solid reference.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, great. And then because we do have 45 minutes left, I just wanted to quickly run through the PowerPoint. I did see all of your feedback last time. Rose from the future is the Rose of today. So just wanted to get any remaining feedback, let you know I did make some updates. I've also added speaker notes, which as we're presenting to HOAs or the Chamber of Commerce or school groups, whatever group we are targeting, we can tailor this messaging to them specifically. But we've moved. So climate change, we still want to give kind of that level setting. What is climate change? What are the impacts of climate change? Why does this matter for folks? There is a little blurb down there if people are wondering, well, what is the greenhouse gas effect? I've included that in the speaker notes, so you guys aren't trying to explain it. You can just have a concise couple sentences there. And then after level setting, what is climate change? Why does this matter? Talking about what climate action is. So we're really trying to paint this in a more positive change, positive impact light. We're not trying to be all doom and gloom, talking about the benefits of climate action. Whether you believe in climate change or not, we can agree, to David's point, we can agree that we all want to be moving in a positive direction, and that these are positive impacts from taking climate action. So we've also got a little call out for the youth impact, specifically understanding the makeup of Sammamish has a lot of families, very strong youth population, and a lot of youth who are very involved in this work. So helping folks, whether we're talking to parents or we're talking to a retirement community, this is a really great motivator for people, future generations and the youth of today for the youth of tomorrow.
Just a quick question for youth impact. So there's opportunities.
Mhm.
Is school closures an opportunity or?
Yeah, so school closures is
That's how I
My
read
kids
it.
would view it that way.
yeah. I could definitely add something in there, less school closures or avoiding school closures.
Okay.
Maybe would that help?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so, yeah.
You bet.
I think that one feels really narrow. Maybe we could go something that's a little bit broader,
Yeah,
Okay.
right?
or lack of disruption to schools or education system or something, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because that even goes into the vehicles mile travel, right? The less traffic, the faster the buses get to school, less they're sitting idling in, if going up to Inglewood Middle School, I take my daughter up there every once in a while and she misses the bus, and there's people waiting all the way down to 228, just waiting in line to kind of creep up. So again, it all, the vehicles mile traveled even.
That's a good point. On some of my remediation projects, we have no idling policies for like heavy equipment and trucks. So, they can only have, say you've got a dump truck, it can only run for like 3 minutes while it's waiting to get loaded. I don't know if we've considered that for like school buses and transportation, but.
It would be the SOVs waiting in line would be
Yeah, I
the
know.
issue. All up and down 228,
Yeah,
right?
so it'll be 8 to 10 vehicles and then it'll be one bus, and then 10 to
Yeah.
12 vehicles and there'll be one bus.
The benefit is though, you reduce greenhouse gas, you actually save money too, because you're burning less fuel.
When everybody's in their robot run vehicles, you can just program it. If your car sits, as soon as it sits, it shuts down.
Yeah, there you go.
And as soon as it moves, everybody's car starts up.
Well, most relatively new cars
Yeah.
don't idle.
Yeah,
The eco mode.
Yeah.
it's annoying.
So we did move the lower household energy bills to the top there.
Yeah,
Heard
yeah,
heard the feedback from last time, and then some ecosystem and human health impacts up there, and then the economic benefits kind of down at the bottom. If you're reviewing this after the fact, I can send this out and let me know if you have any other feedback, but I think we're at a pretty good point with the benefits and the impact in terms of really trying to motivate people to take action. The next slide, we put this in order because we heard from the commission and from the community that a lot of folks are not aware of the climate action plan. So we really wanted to keep that up towards the beginning to talk about, you know, here are the benefits of climate action. Here's what the city is doing. We are setting an example for our residents, and we would like you to join us on this journey. I kind of made this like an animated, but not really animated slide where it highlights these first two goals, because these are the first, these are where we really need the community's help. We already have a great EV adoption rate. Waste diversion is important, but it's a very small part of our emissions. And some of the state laws are already kind of helping with that in terms of organics with businesses. And you know, the styrofoam ban, et cetera. So we're really trying to focus on these first two bullet points, and that's what this presentation focuses on, and the call to action for our community. I heard what you all said about the charts. I took out one of them and we've just got two. So talking about where we're going and specifically calling out this impact of residential natural gas. So residential natural gas is the focus. Understanding that electricity and energy efficiency is also important, and vehicles and transportation are, you know, a chunk of the pie, but natural gas is a really big focus as well. We've called that out with the highlighted arrow, which is also animated. So when you're going through the presentation, that'll pop up.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing with this graph. We added the people icon to kind of show this is where we need the community's support and action. And then the legislature and laws are kind of handling that top portion. And then again, that call out the cap actions. I wish I could change the colors on this, but I cannot. So we're going to be calling it the mauve section. And that's where we are engaging our community and working on programs such as Energy Smart Eastside. Sorry, it's a little small. I wanted to make sure you can all see the speaker notes as well.
What, how often are we updating this?
We can update it as needed for presentation. So I actually,
So are you talking about the emissions?
oh,
Sorry, yes. So
Where
I
to
see the
go?
2019 emissions number, and it's 2025 now.
Mhm.
And we're supposed to be, at a certain point. Where are we actually?
we are going to be getting that information from the K4C greenhouse gas emissions inventory that I had mentioned.
Okay.
They're giving us numbers for, I believe it's 2022 and potentially 2023, but 2022 is the one that's kind of, that's the one that everyone's.
Is that the thing that Matt Kuhar is gonna do?
Yes, he's working on that. Yeah.
Cause I've seen some of this stuff. He's provided it to me,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so King County's currently working with Cascadia, and they're
Yes.
most of the way through, so I do believe he has some preliminary numbers, but I don't have the specific
Yeah.
Sammamish breakdown, which is what we're waiting on.
Rose, what would help me to digest this chart would be like to David's point, when you have the data, if we put an X, here we are in 2025, but I can't really understand where we are relative to the goal. by
I
looking at
see.
this.
Yeah.
So maybe like if it's, once we get
Yeah.
those numbers, we can
Yeah.
put the X like here.
Yeah, are
Like
we,
right there.
are
Well,
we
my
way
guess
below
is-
the goal?
Or-
Are we above it? Or, yeah.
It'll be higher.
Yeah.
You sent out, I'm looking for it, a list of links to various,
That was the talking
in one of
points,
your,
right?
huh?
The talking points email she sent out the 27th.
I think so, and one of those links was a Washington State Department of was it Ecology or Commerce,
Mm.
that is required by law to do a study on how we're doing versus what the legislature's goals have been and that were established by. And it's a document, I looked at it online a couple of days ago. It's a, I don't know, 40-50 page document.
Mhm.
And it shows how the state is doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, they just released their inventory for
Yeah.
the state, yeah. So,
We did great during COVID.
Right,
Of course.
and now we're ticking back up.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we're not taking back as much as they thought. There was a great
Yeah,
article that came
yeah.
out the other day that, you know,
But
we're
the-
still below the threshold, but we're slowly getting
But the
closer.
data
Send that
point,
link out.
it gives you a data point as to what,
Yeah.
and that's statewide, what our progress is. You
Well,
know,
and the
to
state
someday.
state can't have good data unless the cities and counties have good data. Right, and so they should know, it should be kind of rolling up.
Well, I don't think it is. I think.
It works opposite, actually,
Surprise.
unfortunately.
Kind of like the target numbers, they started at
Yeah.
the state and then so we all just kind of said,
Yeah.
okay, that's our target. We
Yeah,
didn't come up with our own targets based on our current status, it was just,
There's so many variables that go into all of this that then each jurisdiction makes some decisions that I know Steve was really involved in though. You know, does Sammamish, take responsibility for its own aviation emissions?
Yeah.
No,
Right?
no, we don't.
I know we don't, but that's what I mean
And
by
that is-
tough decisions.
And the reason was, I think that's a scope 3. And they only wanted to do scope 1 and scope 2.
Okay.
But one of the ironies is, when you do vehicle miles traveled, you only do miles that are driven within the city.
Yep.
So you go to Costco, as soon as you start down the hill, that doesn't count.
that's why that calculation is so complicated, and
Yes,
I gotta look to the
But
consultant
if
for that
the
one.
UPS guy drives from his, or the FedEx, the UPS guy drives from his base up there in Redmond, all the way down East Lake Sammamish Parkway, those miles do count.
well, and it's, it's that same challenge that as soon as you build your, or increase your density and build the town center,
Mhm.
people, you're gonna have more miles traveled inside the city
Mhm.
because people aren't gonna be going to Costco, or they're not gonna go into Redmond to buy,
Well,
they're gonna drive, into the.
Well, they're still gonna go to
Town
Costco because we're not gonna go
Yeah.
to Costco.
well, here's another irony. What is it? Medina, which straddles 520, their per capita of the vehicle miles traveled is through the roof. Well, there's like 420 households in that city. They get tagged with everybody that uses 520. You don't have to live, it's just all those
How
people.
many vehicles are going through
Yeah.
your zip code?
Mm. Yes, yes.
My point here is-
Yeah,
We're in the rabbit hole, my
Yes,
friend.
it is.
So you're right, it's complicated.
It is, and that's why it's important when we do look at that GHG emissions inventory to take that in the context of the larger King County and how Sammamish ties in and what some of those
Yeah.
numbers look like, not just for us, but with our partner cities as well. So, okay, so after that, it's where are we going? We're focusing on the MAUV section. Energy efficiency, number 1, very important. And from that, kind of getting a little bit into weatherization and calling out heat pumps. We don't get too into the weeds of heat pumps in this presentation. This is really the kind of overarching general. We've got 10 minutes to go into it, just getting our foot in the door. If we had future presentations to the same group, or we're going specifically for Energy Smart Eastside, we would tailor the presentation accordingly. For example, I presented to the Lake Washington School District, PTA Sustainability Committee on Tuesday, and I tailored this presentation to be a little bit more specific for school students and parents and kind of gave it through that lens. Then we're focusing a little bit on transportation. This is great. This is one of those more low-hanging fruit actions that people can take. So, energy efficiency with those smaller appliances, installing a smart thermostat, et cetera. That's great, all the way up to getting a heat pump, which is a larger purchase and more tangible energy emissions or GHG emissions. This is a great opportunity to briefly call out Metroflex and Community Van. This is something we would give you pamphlets. We wouldn't expect you to know all the ins and outs, or you could direct people to the city website. There will be links, like activated links for each of those, so that when these are emailed after the fact, for example, I only had about 15 folks at the PTA meeting, but I was told that the slides would be mailed out to up to 100, which is great. We want folks to be able to just easily access that information. Biking, yeah.
Yeah, we learned at a prior meeting, there's actually a bus that goes from here to the light rail station in Redmond. I didn't know about that.
Call out that bus specifically. Yeah,
Like the one that the light rail station under construction?
No, it's complete.
In Redmond?
In Redmond.
It's running.
Is it?
There
Now,
is
they
a.
don't have it going all the way to downtown Redmond right now, I don't think, but they have,
It
yeah.
doesn't go to
It's going
down
to
Seattle
Bellevue.
yet.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, that into Redmond Town Center. I think they're still working on that, right?
I think you're right, that
That
one's
last
gonna
little
open this
leg.
month.
That's
Yeah.
a big
But
one
that
down by the end
big-
of 520s.
Yeah, the big carpool or carport there, or
Yeah.
the car park, yeah, that one's up and running. It's
You can
running
get to Bellevue.
to Bellevue.
To Bellevue,
Oh.
yeah.
It's just doing Bell right now, cause they're
Yeah.
still fixing the major problems that happened on the bridges, but
Yeah. Oh, I
You
didn't
could
realize
do-
that one had opened. I thought you
Yeah.
still had to drive to Microsoft.
That was Claudia Balducci's doing. She's a King County council person. She forced them to start that Bellevue to the end of the line.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I rode that on the first day. Just it was
Yeah,
fun for
doing the
but I
fun,
didn't
right.
realize that Redmond was open. I
Yeah.
didn't realize you still have to drive
Yeah.
to Microsoft to catch it.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they got,
I'll take that. Then.
they're what, about a
Yeah.
year out on the bridge, getting in work.
Yeah, that's, if the city can do anything about that,
Yeah.
that would make my life a lot easier.
Sure.
I would appreciate
Mercer
it.
Island's
Sure.
trying, I'll
They
tell
can
you.
Do anything about light rail.
I would get here on time. That's all important to the
Yeah.
council.
Why didn't you say so?
Exactly, right.
So as Steve had mentioned, you tell them, you tell them, you tell them again. So this is again focusing on the benefits
Yeah.
on the back end of the presentation. And then saying, okay, what can you actually tangibly do? Here are 4 things you can do. Behavior changes, visit our website, pick some actions from the sustainability guide, weatherize your home and appliances, weatherize your home and maximize energy efficiency through appliances. I'll reword that. Carpool and consider flexible transportation options. And then another one that is a pretty minor initial thing to do, but could have longer term implications is just add some kind of note to your HVAC machine, that HVAC technology that reminds you to switch it out with a heat pump if you have the ability whenever it goes out. So that's just like out of sight, out of mind. You do it once, you put it on there, and then when the day comes, you have that reminder.
So Rose, can you back to the first slide? I'm trying to connect the steps to. No, where was the one that talked about the recycling and waste diversion? I think you had it in one of the earlier slides.
Recycling and
Yeah, you have
Yeah.
70% waste diversion. So isn't that an easy action you could add to the end? There probably are a lot of people that aren't aware of the community recycling events or composting, or I don't know how you want to categorize that, but if that's a goal you listed up front, it should probably be a step at the end, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was more covering the overall climate action plan goals, and then, specifically focusing on those first 2 is what this presentation is getting at, but I think that's something we can add in depending on who we're presenting to, and if we do want to kind of broaden the breadth of this presentation to include a note on waste.
Or maybe it's under behavior changes.
That's kind of what I was thinking, is
Yeah,
it kind of
okay.
nests
All right.
under there.
There's a, This Old House YouTube.
Mhm.
It's about 10 minutes long. I watched it a couple of days
I
ago.
love that show.
Yeah, on
No.
heat pumps, the guy, I can't remember, I don't know.
I saw that one,
Did you?
but they had a big drill rig in the yard. I mean, it was a big system.
No, he's inside, just going through, and he had a cutaway heat pump, he had the new valves on how
From my
it
old
switches
home.
back and forth. Cause the
This old
one
house.
of the big tricks for the new heat pumps is
That's
they have
my
these
house, my old home.
variable valves and fan motor
Oh, okay.
speeds.
Didn't see that one.
Okay,
Yeah, it's a.
cool, I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
There's old guys in like New England that
Oh,
they
I
fix
thought-
houses, there's TV
Oh,
show.
Bobby.
Yeah.
I thought that was. Yeah, going back to that last slide.
Oh, sorry,
I-
yes.
I'm a little skeptical of the last one. Steve, maybe you can provide, last bullet of the last slide.
Yes.
Maybe you can provide your own experience, but I don't think putting a note on your HVAC system to do something when it goes out is gonna do you any good. Cause when it's out, it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And you're like, crap, I gotta change this. If you then find out that putting in a heat pump is days of work, because you're doing something more than just
Hmm,
furnace in, furnace out, you're not gonna do that.
okay,
Well, if you have to replace a furnace, it's a day job.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But if it's more than a day to put in the heat pump, and that's what I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
it is. It's basically,
And they're,
they show up with the parts, they rip out your gas, put in and before the sun goes down.
oh, okay, it's a day thing. Never mind.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
But there's a
Disregard.
connection to the, either the water or the air in your yard, and they've got a drill.
Oh, no, these are air
extraction
source
points.
heat pumps.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. No,
Ground source is
that-
typical of newer, like, you put it in when you're building your house, it's
Yeah,
not
and
something
they're-
that's
So you don't have a ground source system?
No, they're
very
very
expensive.
Yes, they are.
And not necessary around here, because they're really good in like
No,
the really cold
the-
areas.
the
right?
air source heat pumps are fine, yeah.
Okay, never mind. Then
But
I'm in.
I don't know, somebody might ask you about the $8,600. That's an income qualified.
Yes, so there is a note in the speaking
Okay,
slides and
That's a teaser.
yeah.
To get them to
Say
click on the link.
two,
That's it.
up
to,
to.
yeah.
And maybe it's, you know, we can talk about it more, but maybe it's more like, learn more about the technology.
Yeah,
Right.
I added
You
in
may
that,
qualify up to
Yep.
maybe 600.
I think
Yeah.
it's 150% AMI, which is decent salary.
yeah,
Not too many people around here are making that or below that, I think, but
I think you did a good job of
yeah.
updating the presentation for the commission feedback, so.
Absolutely.
great. Yeah, I really appreciate all those comments. I think they were very tangible changes and hopefully this presentation helps with that great work of changing heart and minds. And I am excited for any and all of you to be giving it eventually at some point during this year.
Any-
Any and all.
Yes.
We'll see. But great. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. David, back to you.
I will call for adjournment.
That's- Look at that.
We are adjourned.